I rise in opposition to the so-called citizens initiative before us that would require Michigan women to pay for a separate insurance rider to cover abortions, regardless of the circumstances surrounding their pregnancy. I'm about to tell you something that I've not shared with many people in my life. But over 20 years ago, I was a victim of rape. And thank God it didn't result in a pregnancy. Because I can't imagine going through what I went through and then having to consider what to do about an unwanted pregnancy from an attacker. How extreme does this measure need to be? I think you need to see the face of the women that you are impacting by this vote today.
That was Michigan State Senator Gretchen Whitmer earlier this week, telling a profoundly personal story to her colleagues in the state Senate. But even after Whitmer and some of her colleagues shared their experiences of rape and miscarriage, Michigan's Republican-controlled Senate circumvented their own Republican governor and voted on Wednesday to require women seeking medical coverage for abortions to purchase an additional insurance policy, even in the case of rape or incest. It is being called rape insurance, and Michigan will now join the ranks of 8 other states in passing similar laws restricting private insurance coverage for abortions. Melissa, there are now 9 states that do this, that are targeting a very, very small percentage of women. There are 13 states that have passed 20-week abortion bans, and there are 24 states, half the states in this country, have banned insurance from being sold on the federal exchange under the Affordable Care Act if they provide abortion coverage. What's going on here?
In every way, this is appalling. So if we just begin with a sort of conservative free market assumption about sort of the desire for government not to intervene, particularly in the marketplace. So take out the questions of women and women's rights and our body. Just the basic free market belief that if you have a product and you offer it, and it's a safe and legal product, and you offer it on a marketplace, the question of whether or not it does well or does poorly should have everything to do with whether or not there are consumers who want to buy it, and the government should not be regulating that. That should be Republican speak 101. And the idea that instead Republicans are going in and saying, all right, no, we are going to decide what the insurance policies can and cannot cover based on our own relatively limited beliefs about what is moral and ethical, and not even medical, right? So the last thing I would say on this is what we know is that those who are typically seeking termination services after 20 weeks are often people who actually who are carrying wanted pregnancies, right? And where something has gone terribly wrong in the pregnancy, and where they're having to terminate the pregnancy, not because they're making a decision not to bear a child, but rather because something has gone terribly wrong, often threatening their lives or the lives of that unborn fetus. And those aspects are the things that are completely ignored by this kind of policy.
Well, and it makes those women it makes the provision of those abortions harder, more dangerous, further away. The same is true for abortions covered under medical insurance. They tend to be wanted pregnancies. Liz, you know, Gretchen Whitmer is a champion and a hero for putting herself forward like that. But some part of me is distressed by the idea that women now have to volunteer these incredibly emotionally painful moments in their lives as sort of the public explanation for why a basic constitutionally protected right should be offered to them.
The fact that you have to drag that through the mud again, and that woman who is trying desperately to not have that define her, to move forward, is now forced to, because people are trying to legislate for her. Yes, last night on Twitter, the anti-choice movement started a hashtag calling "Pray to End Abortion." And I just said, it is simple. You do not pray to end abortion. Birth control ends abortion. And the fact that is the fundamental problem, is that I've said it time and time again, but they do not care about the experience of women. They don't want to see the faces. When stories matter, when you see them cut off the stories of dreamers, you see them cut off the stories of women telling us, because they know stories are effective. And the fact that these women have to tell their stories is painful to me. The fact that they are brave enough to do it, there are people who are seeing that and saying, I'm going to sign up for that petition in Michigan. There's a petition in Michigan, 160,000 people sign it. They can they can
That's what confuses me, though, because this was 3.3% of the Michigan population that signed this petition to then override the governor's veto. And what I don't get, Melissa, is you talk about gun control, you talk about issues relating to reproductive freedom. The far right just seems better organized about this. I mean, how is it that the vast majority of women in this country who use contraception, who know a friend who has had an abortion, are not better, sort of more up in arms about this and willing to make their distaste and their frustration, their anger known at the ballot box?
Well, I think there's a couple of things. One, it actually does go back in part to what Liz was saying. So this idea that birth control ends abortion, but of course only in certain kinds of cases and only certain kinds of abortion, right? So it doesn't actually change anything for people who are survivors of sexual assault, and birth control doesn't necessarily change anything if you, in fact, were trying to get pregnant and then your pregnancy goes wrong and has to be terminated. So part of it is that often women, particularly women who are voters, who tend to be better educated and tend to have more income and a whole variety of things, right, are in circumstances where they believe that they can make and they are empowered to make a set of life choices that won't put them in these circumstances. So we know that people have a kind of bias about their own lives in general that says one of the ways I protect myself and protect myself from believing I can be victimized or find myself in this kind of circumstance is to tell myself, oh, you know, I'm safe, right? I can be safe in this way. And so it can make it difficult to then organize politically around those who are more vulnerable.
And what I would say, part of the Lady Parts Justice thing that we're doing is the one thing that the left does, they use church and religion differently. They look at it as an outreach. And these big mega churches, people are getting together every day at these churches and they're organizing. What we want people to do in their communities is get together with other women and form these leagues so that they can target the city council people and the people in their legislatures and find out who they are and get together and start making a movement, because what we need to do is get rid of people who start voting and making these decisions.
For those women, local level is right, spot on, Liz. LadyPartsJustice.org.
LadyPartsJustice.com.
All right. After the break, while women make up more than half the population in this country, we still remain vastly underrepresented at all levels of government, to Liz's point. When will this change? Senator Kirsten Gillibrand and the only sitting female Democratic governor in the United States, Maggie Hassan, will join us next on Now.